Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thank you for watching us tonight. Bejamin Netanyahu says President Bush is not strong enough on terrorism. Very provocative. And I have a number of questions for the former Israeli Prime Minister. We'll have a face-to-face debate a bit later on. But first, a Talking Points memo, more bad news about the 9/11 charity situation. You may remember back on September 21st, all the networks simultaneously broadcast a concert to benefit the 9/11 families and others who were directly affected by the terror attack. Off that concert, CDs and cassettes went on sale, released December 4th. Well, up until this week, we hadn't heard anything about the money generated from the sale of those recordings. Here's the deal. The project essentially was a bomb, with only about $9 million expected to go to charity after expenses. Called the Tribute to Heroes CD, the record sold more than 600,000 copies worldwide, not a large number. After Factor producer Christine Cotta began calling Warner Music and Sony Interscope, things began moving, and the United Way told us they expect to receive the money shortly. They haven't received anything thus far. The main reason the project failed, in my opinion, was lack of promotion, which costs money. So why didn't the artists get out and publicize it? Good question. So we asked the artists. That was fun. Following people had no comment. Bruce Springsteen, Faith Hill, John Bon Jovi, Sting, Dave Matthews, Tom Petty, Neil Young, Stevie Wonder, Fred Durst, Sheryl Crow, Eddie Vedder, Paul Simon, the Dixie Chicks, Enrique Iglesias, Mariah Carey, Celine Dion, and Alicia Keys. Billy Joel is ill, but said he is concerned. Take Six wants to wait until Sony makes an official statement on the matter before they comment. So once again, just like the Hollywood community, there's little follow-through with the musicians. Again, Talking Points is amazed. Doing good is a long-term strategy. You just can't do a project and let it go. You have to see it through to the end. If these pop stars really wanted to make a difference, they would have promoted the heck out of that recording on their own time and dime. The media loves these people. Getting attention is no problem. But no, the project failed, and it shouldn't have. There's an important untold story about fame in America, the power of celebrity. We will begin telling it, and in June there'll be an O'Reilly Factor special on the subject. Remember, all who participated in the concert got great publicity for themselves, so they owe it to the families to help them as much as possible. No comments, don't cut it. And that's a memo. Now for an inside look at the story, with us is Lisa Gardner, the music reporter for USA Today. And from Los Angeles, Renata Rafferty, the author of the book, Don't Just Give It Away, How to Make the Most of Your Charitable Giving. All right, Lisa, we'll start with you. Am I wrong here?
Well, I can tell you that as a music reporter, the music industry has come under such intense scrutiny recently that for them to behave in a deliberately or even a carelessly irresponsible manner would just be bad business, I think. I mean, this is such a high-profile charity. It was such a horrible tragedy. I think it's too soon just yet to really lay any blame. I mean, I haven't seen any hard evidence.
All right, but you're not going to sell any more records. I mean, the hard evidence is the CD was a bomb. Would you agree with that?
I don't know if I would say that it was a bomb necessarily.
660,000 after all of that publicity nationwide and all those artists?
It hasn't been a very good year for record sales. I mean, you have to remember the economy's down.
Insane Clown Posse sold 3 times that much with their dopey album. Come on.
Well, you could also point to a number of major artists. You could look at Mariah Carey, whose album was a bomb, just for starters.
It was terrible. The album was awful.
And you like the Insane Clown Posse
album better? No, I mean, I'm just saying that this album for the families wasn't terrible.
Oh, not at all. No.
Yeah, it had good material, but did you see one promotion by any of these artists for it?
Well, I'm sure that artists...
Did you see one?
I didn't see an individual promotion,
there
no,
weren't
but I've
any.
spoken...
All right, Renata, am I wrong?
You're not wrong, but I'll tell you, it's just bad business. I mean, a lot of these artists were exposed to the public or segments of the public for the very first time in that concert. This would have been a great opportunity to get their music into the hands of some people who normally hadn't heard them. And historically, we know from research that cause-related marketing efforts, when done appropriately and aggressively, are tremendously beneficial and financially successful, not just for the corporation, but for the charity.
All right, but the situation we face here is this, and this is the no-spin deal, okay? You've got 2 big record companies, Warner and Sony Interscope. They didn't want to put a lot of promotional money behind this because that comes off the top, all right? And I could understand that. I mean, they're basically recouping expenses and giving the rest to the family. So isn't it up to the artists here, if they're sincere in trying to help these people, to go out and sell this album?
You've got a great point on that, and yeah, the artists should have been, even if not for charitable reasons, sure, we would have liked to see them go beyond just performing that night.
I mean, come on.
But from a
it's just
business
ridiculous.
perspective, they've missed an opportunity to, as I said, get their music into some hands of some people who wouldn't normally have
Listen,
it.
you know this world better than I do. I mean, I was expecting just what we got. No comment, no comment, no comment. You know, they don't want to come up against me. They don't want to explain themselves. They have a sense of entitlement. But it just doesn't make any sense, all right, for these people, if they're sincere. Now, I know that all of them are not sincere. I know there are some charlatans here who don't care. They want to get their face in front of a nationwide audience. But there are some good people. But all of them will not step up. Does that surprise you?
I don't know if it's a matter of not stepping up. I think it's too early in the process at this point. I mean, the amounts made were just recently tabulated. The first checks were recently sent out.
Yeah, because we called and asked them to send it out. That's why they were sent out. I'm not asking about... I think you're misinterpreting me. I don't want them to criticize the record companies, all right? I agree with you. They're sending the money out now. That's fine with us. What about the promotion? What about that?
Well, I think a number of artists have spoken a great deal about September 11th, and in doing so have mentioned their work and were very much involved in the concert. And these are, you have to remember, these are artists like people like Sting and U2 and Bruce Springsteen. Their fans love them partly because they are socially conscious. And
why wouldn't they go out? Go ahead, Renata.
I think there may be something else at play here, too, because these were artists that represent a number of different recording companies. I'm wondering whether the artists were, in essence, discouraged from promoting the album because it might expose audiences to artists from other companies. Oh. Maybe there was that consideration at play.
Yeah, I have another one, but Elisa just groaned here. What do you think?
Well, I don't mean to be Pollyanna-ish about the whole thing, but I doubt that, again, this was a very high-profile event, a very high-profile
I don't know, but I'll tell you this.
Well, why do you think it has sold so few copies? I mean,
here's why I think it is.
It was out in time for Christmas. What happened?
Yeah, here's what I think it is. Number one, most of these performers, and I hate to say it, are selfish people, all right? And they are not willing to put themselves out on the line unless there's an immediate payoff for them. There is an immediate payoff in a telethon. They get their face on television. People say, oh, look what the good they're doing. But to do the slog work, to go on the O'Reilly Factor, to go on The View, to go on Imus, to go on all of these entertainment programs, and to promote this project to help the families takes work, and it also, their PR people are saying, don't be around so much, don't be so available, that your currency goes down if you're seen too much. You know that, Elisa. You know that's the game they play.
Though I know that you have put out, you know, you have solicited, you've expressed interest in this, but do you think they've been actively solicited for this particular project?
I will tell you that guys like Sting and Springsteen and Bono and all these guys could get on any program they wanted any time to talk about anything they wanted.
This issue of celebrity advocacy, and I love that term, and Bill, the first time I heard it was a celebrity on your show.
Right.
But the term celebrity advocacy. But let's face it, we could probably sit here and name the celebrities, whether it's in the recording industry or the movie industry, who we know are true advocates on behalf of a charitable cause or some particular cause. And the rest of them are like the rest of the population.
They're phonies. And
well,
you know,
we
are going to issue an open invitation to any of the people that we mentioned to come on here and, you know, maybe even hype the sales. That thing's still in the record stores. You could still buy it. But we'll see what happens. Renata, thanks as always. Elisa, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the rundown, our good friend in the Arab world, Saudi Arabia, giving money to the families of suicide bombers. Did you know that? And later, Netanyahu and O'Reilly, one-on-one. Right back. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Bill O'Reilly in the Unresolved Problems segment tonight. Hardline Israeli former Prime Minister Bejamin Netanyahu spoke before members of the U.S. Senate today, and he isn't pleased about President Bush calling for an Israeli military pullback.
The question many in my country are now asking is this: will America apply its principles consistently and win this war? Or will it selectively abandon these principles and thereby ultimately risk losing the war? Until last week, I was absolutely certain that the United States would adhere to its principles and lead the free world to a decisive victory. Today, I too have my concerns.
Joining us now from Washington is Bejamin Netanyahu. You know, I saw you on Hannity and Combs earlier in the week, and I'm with you about the terrorism deal. There's no question that blowing up children and women is terrorism, and it's got to be fought, and I have no problem with the Israeli government being as aggressive as they can. in fighting terrorism. But there's a difference between our fight here against al-Qaeda and your fight against the Palestinians, and here's the difference. The Palestinians have some legitimate grievances against the Israeli government, specifically that in their territory you have hundreds of thousands of Israeli settlers, which exacerbate the problem. We, on the other hand, didn't do anything to al-Qaeda. They just attacked us out of the blue. So it's not exactly the same comparison. Where am I going wrong?
Twice. Number one, it makes no difference whether you have a grievance, real or imaginary. Nothing justifies terrorism. That was the first principle that President Bush articulated. Nothing, absolutely nothing justifies terrorism any more than something justifies Nazism. Hitler had grievances. He thought he was shortchanged. Germany was shortchanged in Versailles. So what? You don't practice Nazism. If the Palestinians have grievances, so what? Nothing justifies blowing up children on a bus. That's the first part. The second part is that their grievances are not real ones in the sense that they constantly say this is occupied territory. Well, it's not occupied territory. It is a territory that is in dispute. It is territory that was seized by Jordan. It's part of our ancestral homeland. That's where Judea is the word from which, the area from which Jews come from. We've been there for thousands of years, but nevertheless, it was taken over illegally by Jordan in 1948, and then taken over by Israel in a war of self-defense. The UN resolution 242 says that Israel has to withdraw from some areas, not all of them, from some areas to secure and recognize boundaries. So we have a dispute.
All right,
but
I
mind you,
understand
all
the
the Palestinian areas, Bill, just one last point on this. All the Palestinians live under a Palestinian government. They don't live under us.
Understand.
So we're not occupying Palestinians. We have areas in dispute.
Is that you've made incursions into their territory so that they can't settle there. I mean, that's basically what they're saying. Now, is it legitimate to fight terrorism with terrorism? There is no question that terrorism and a suicide bomber is a terrorist. But when you guys go in and level camps and, smash through people's apartment walls looking for the terrorists and do these things, they consider that terrorism. So are you fighting terrorism with terrorism?
No, that's what the Taliban are saying about you. I mean, the terrorists deliberately target civilians, which is a war crime, and then deliberately hide behind civilians seeking immunity. Well, you didn't give them that immunity in Afghanistan, and you, in fact, used overwhelming air power. You first told them, the Taliban and al-Qaeda, get out, surrender, and if you don't, we're coming in. And you told that to the civilian population. Whoever left, and you just went in there and bombed. And I'm not faulting you at all for those civilian casualties. The civilian casualties, both in the World Trade Center and in Afghanistan, are the responsibility of Mullah Omar and bin Laden. Both of them are responsible. Right. In our case, the civilian casualties are the responsibility of Arafat, who both sends his killers to our coffee shops and our pizzerias.
But there's a matter of degree, and you know,
hides behind them.
As a military man, you know it's a matter of degree. You can do certain things, and you can be restrained in certain things. We were restrained in our bombing of Afghanistan. We didn't go in and carpet bomb that whole country, and we could have. We didn't. We surgical bombed, and of course you're going to make mistakes and things. But look, let's put that aside.
Bill, stop. This is supposed to be a creative dialogue, so I'm going to stop you and interrupt you. Here's the main point. You were precise and careful in your bombing in Afghanistan. I don't doubt that. We didn't bomb.
No, you couldn't bomb.
Yeah, we used.
You couldn't.
No, we could.
You couldn't.
We could take our aircraft and do what you're doing in Afghanistan.
No. It's too dense. It's too much of an urban situation. You couldn't do it.
Have you seen?
Yeah,
have you seen the villages and towns in Afghanistan?
Many times.
In Afghanistan?
No.
Listen,
Let
me tell you something. No, but you haven't been to Afghanistan. What we've done is done what you haven't done, and I don't blame you for not doing it. We've put our ground troops in place right from the start. We've gone house to house, putting our own soldiers at risk. 13 of them died yesterday as a result of a kid with suicide bombing dispatched by the Palestinians. They didn't want to shoot the kid.
Like us in Vietnam.
Our own soldiers,
But look,
we
Mr.
put
Prime
our own
Minister,
soldiers
like
at
us
risk because we do not want to include increased civilian casualties.
But
go ahead.
Like us in Vietnam, whenever you do that, you're going to anger the local population. There is the danger of soldiers making mistakes, brutalizing civilians, and you know it's happened. But let's go on. I think the only solution to this problem between you and the Palestinians...
You have the last word on every one of them?
No, I just want to get another. I want to get another topic because you're fascinating.
Let me put something in. We're not, I must tell you, Bill, Israel is doing what no army in the world would do in the face of this wanton terrorism that by now has killed 7 times the numbers of Israelis prorated as in the World Trade Center. We're going house to house. We're not carpet bombing. We're putting our soldiers at risk. We could finish this thing in 2 days if we just blanket fired.
I understand that, but you understand my point, too. When you do that, you're going to anger the population, and people are going to get hurt that shouldn't.
Well,
I understand why you're doing
angering the
it.
population in Afghanistan, you know,
Right.
so what?
Now, the solution to this problem in Israel and the Palestinians, in my opinion, is you have to separate the two. You have to separate, all right? You have to get a mandate where Palestinians are here, Israelis are here, and in the middle are the UN forces to keep you apart. All right? And that way there wouldn't be infiltration. You know, there would be a controlled situation. Is that the solution that you see?
Well, I certainly think the Palestinians ought to have self-government. I think we have to have an effective physical lines of separation, but I disagree that the UN would do it. We put the UN in UNIFIL to spend tens of billions of dollars on a UN force called UNIFIL to separate Palestinian terrorism from Israel in South Lebanon. The result was that the international forces served as a cover for the Palestinian terrorists, and they thought that Israel couldn't go through them. In fact, it was very difficult to go through them. So, in fact, it increased terrorism. No, I think the right thing to do is to remove Arafat's regime that is committed to Israel's destruction, to have democratic elections in the Palestinian areas, choose a new leadership that doesn't want to destroy Israel and doesn't use terrorism. Let us negotiate a workable deal where the Palestinians have self-government and we have security. That's equitable. That's reasonable. It will not happen as long as Arafat is there.
But I don't think the Palestinians are going to support that election. We have a minute left. Why?
They can support anything. They don't have a choice. They're governed by the dark dictatorship of Arafat.
Why does Europe hate Israel?
I don't know, but Europe has a lot to answer for because 60 years ago they did damn all and allowed the Jewish people to be murdered on its soil, and now 60 years later they side with another mass murderer who's murdering innocent people and condemning Israel, the sovereign Jewish state, for finally taking up arms.
You don't know why they're siding with the Palestinians?
Oil, other reasons, many reasons, propaganda, you name it. Nothing absolves that opaqueness. I think the American people have shown an admirable common sense. They know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. And the bad guys are the Arafats of the world, the Talibans of the world. Europe doesn't seem to have that sense of clarity.
Mr. Prime Minister, as always, thank you. We appreciate it. We'll be back with Bill Bennett in a moment. Back in the book segment tonight, William Bennett has a new book out called Why We Fight, Moral Clarity and the War on Terrorism. Mr. Bennett, as you may know, is a conservative and a Roman Catholic. He joins us now from Washington. Got a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about. First of all, last night I called for Cardinal Law of Boston to resign or be indicted. Your feeling on that?
Yes, I wrote an editorial in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago saying that he needed to resign, and that was before the evidence that's come out in the last couple of days was in. Yeah, you know, one thing we know about in Washington, Mr. O'Reilly, is cover-up, and this was a cover-up, and it shouldn't have happened. Sunlight's the best disinfectant. They need to let more sunlight in. He needs to go.
Do you know him?
Yes, I do. I've known him for years, liked him and admired him for years, but this is egregious, and it's a terrible shame, but he's the responsible party.
What do you think is at the root of his problem and not taking aggressive action to stop these pedophile priests? Do you have any idea?
I think it's probably hundreds, maybe thousands of years of the church being under assault by any number of different authorities, you know, from Rome forward to kings to others, saying, you know, we've got to keep our own affairs in hand. We can't let the rest of the world know because they'll use any excuse to try to put us out of business. It's a bad habit in the modern world. It's a bad habit in a democracy. It's a bad habit in a land where people, Catholics, will forgive the church for the sins of people, but be angry with the church if there's a cover-up.
Yeah. So they're paranoid about letting anybody know anything bad about it, and they do all these bad things. Well,
it's an old habit, and it's an old habit, and it dies hard, but it's got to die.
All right, we just talked to Bejamin Netanyahu, and I know you're a big supporter of Israel, and I understand where the Israelis are coming from, but I also understand that when you have settlements, as they do, hundreds of them, on Arab soil, on Palestinian soil, that you're exacerbating a situation, and that at this juncture, when you've proven your point, you've gone in there and disrupted the Palestinian state, that would it be better for them to pull back and say, all right, now, we're going to give you one more chance to get this thing under control, and we're going to compromise as well. Would that be better to do now?
I guess somebody can always say one more chance, but how many chances do you get? How many bites at the apple do you get? How many chances did we give to al-Qaeda and bin Laden before we struck back? Look, the Israelis have conceded the largest point here, that the Palestinians have grievances. They've conceded that for years in any number of meetings and treaties. They concede that under an agreement they'll give up land, and they've given up land before. What they can't concede is that it's all right for other entities to inflict death on their people at will every day in supermarkets, seders, and everywhere else. These guys at least have to renounce their position that Israel should be extinguished from the face of the earth.
We had Ambassador Murphy, Ambassador of Saudi Arabia under Ronald Reagan, on earlier in the broadcast, and I got almost upset at the man because I said, look, Saudi Arabia is paying the bombers' families money every time they blow themselves up, and he said that's okay. And it's outrageous. I mean, I think that's,
that's
helping
accessory.
terrorists.
We call that an accessory to the crime, accessory to murder in American law. That's ridiculous. It's outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Now, Europe. Europe hates Israel. Europe doesn't like us. What's going on over there?
We've done too much for them. You want to earn somebody's contempt, do too much for them. I mean, it's an old aphorism, but in a way it's true. We have saved their bacon every time they're in serious trouble. We liberated them twice from barbarism in this century. We rebuilt the whole continent. There's a kind of, attitude that they are somehow superior to us because they've been around longer, and it's really envy.
Why do they hate Israel
States.
so much? Why are they just, so pro-Palestinian?
It's hard for me to know exactly. I'm not sure anybody knows exactly. Let me suggest two things. They're a close friend of the United States. There is also, as you know, Bill, a kind of virulent anti-Semitism going on now in the world, in the Middle East and in Europe, that is extraordinary. Bernard Lewis, the professor at Princeton, said there's nothing like this that's gone on since the Third Reich. I mean, you read stuff out of the Middle East Media Research Institute, I know we get that stuff, that talks about Hitler of blessed memory, and this stuff is cropping up in Europe. The decadence of Europe used to be a phrase people reserved for when they were really angry, but there is a kind of decadent thinking, a kind of resentment of the New World, a resentment of the success of the United States and Israel that is very telling. It's very discouraging, and it's very telling about them.
Right, and we have to exempt Britain, of course, in that, because they've been our best friend, and
absolutely,
again,
been terrific.
Right, and Blair stepping up at his own risk once again, and I admire the man.
Yeah, and you make a very good point, a good correction, because the intellectuals in Britain are like the intellectuals in continental Europe.
He's catching
Blair's standing up, and frankly, I was surprised.
Right. Mr. Bennett, we appreciate it. The book, again, is Why We Fight, Moral Clarity in the War on Terrorism, and it's a good read for anybody out there looking to get educated, and we appreciate it always. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you, Mr.
Next, we'll wrap things up with the most ridiculous item of the day and some of your mail. Time now for the most ridiculous item of the day. Things are still ridiculous at the nation's airports. It's really painful to fly because of all the chaos at the ticket counters and security stations. But we've always thought that once the plane was parked, things were safe. Think again. In Los Angeles, a parked American Airlines jet began rolling, smashed through a fence, and didn't stop until its nose hit a side street. As always, airline officials say an investigation is underway. We say, have your experts check the parking brake. It was probably not properly set, which, of course, could be ridiculous. Finally, tonight, the Mail, the tide has definitely turned against Cardinal Law of Boston after proof has surfaced that he protected yet another pedophile priest. We received thousands of emails about him. 90% want him to resign. Jim Dunleavy, Charlotte, North Carolina. Bill, I am a Roman Catholic, father of 10, grandfather of 11. I cannot say it strongly enough. Law should go or be prosecuted. Betty Munley, Enwell, New York. In my opinion, Cardinal Law has joined the ranks of Judas Iscariot. Jonathan Epstein, Boston. Bill, I am sick of this good men make mistakes line we've been fed in Boston for months. If a guy does 10 good things but then commits murder, is he still a good man? But there are those who still defend the Cardinal. Nancy Serwick, Oak Lawn, Illinois. Mr. O'Reilly, your extreme bushwhacking of Cardinal Law was unwarranted and sad. The Catholic Church doesn't need Catholics like you. Peter Tully, Locust Grove, Georgia. Bill, it would be nice for you to express the same moral outrage about the George Bush Enron scandal that you do about Cardinal Law. Mr. Tully, I guess you missed a dozen or so segments we have done on Enron. And by the way, the president was not involved. And why exactly are you drawing this comparison? Talk about apples and oranges. Vincent Kirkuru, Simsbury, Connecticut. Bill, you are right. Evil has gotten a foothold in the church. It is time for an exorcism. About the continuing controversy over reparations, Charlton Heston, Beverly Hills, California. I'm appalled to find that rabble-rousers want compensation for slavery from Americans. When Lincoln freed the slaves, many of them joined the Northern Army. At the end of the war, 10% of those serving in the Northern forces were black, and blacks have continued to defend this country ever since. About our pal Geraldo's coverage of the Middle East, Susan Abundanzo, Silver Spring, Maryland. Bill, thanks for giving Geraldo the chance to defend himself against his relentless critics. Stuart Sachs, Stamford, Connecticut. Why should anyone be surprised at the vigor with which Geraldo espouses the Palestinian cause? Didn't he defend Bill Clinton from start to finish? Linda Fisher, San Antonio, Texas. Mr. O, thanks for explaining to Geraldo how the world works. When cowardly terrorists hide behind civilians, there are going to be civilian casualties when those terrorists are pursued. Delana Zamora, El Paso, Texas. O'Reilly, I just watched the interview with the lead singer of Creed. I never noticed how handsome you are. You never noticed, Delana? Lisa Blount, Patterson, California. Mr. O'Reilly, I'm 15 and think the Factor is great and all, but you have made my brother a zombie. Please convince my brother there is more to life than news. Well, first of all, Lisa, he may be a zombie, but he's a smart zombie. And second, there is more to life than news, which is why we're only on 1 hour a day. And how about that website, which is on 24 hours a day, www.foxnews.com/O'Reilly. We have the interview with the Creed lead singer posted on the website. We have my column for WorldNetDaily.com on there. Factor gear, signed books for Mother's Day and Father's Day and Graduation Day and Arbor Day. Did Arbor Day happen already? I never know when that is. And all kinds of stuff on the website. Also, how about emailing us with some pithy comments? O'Reilly@foxnews.com, O'Reilly@foxnews.com. Name and
Town.
Keep it
Pithy.
if you wish to. All right. Those are the rules. And we like reading your email, so thanks a lot for sending it in. That is it for us today. As always, we thank you for watching The Factor. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Hanny and Combs are next, and they're going to talk about why Yale is giving some students financial aid who've been convicted of drug felonies. All right, that debate's next. And we hope to see you next time. Remember, the spin stops here.